Teachers refer to children as alphabet kids because they're the ones that have letters after their names, such as ADHD, ASD, OCD, etc.
So we are focusing now on doing more early identification, working together with a continuum work group to identify some of those behaviors that might indicate mental health issues to come, trying to educate our staff and enlist them in identifying those kids.
When teachers talk to parents prior to a child having a diagnosis from a medical professional, teachers are not allowed to, by law, to tell a parent, I think your child has ADHD or your child does have ADHD. But that is skirted around in conversation by making comments such as, your child has behaviors that are consistent with children that are identified as ADHD. And so in a way you're going around about to tell the child's parent that they have ADHD without directly saying it because you're not allowed to. When teachers talk to each other and speaking about students, they will even use the terms, well, so-and-so has ADHD. Even though they've not been diagnosed with that, it's just common knowledge on some level that certain behaviors equal that. And so teachers do discuss students as having those conditions, even though they haven't been diagnosed as having them yet. My previous assistant principal, anytime you would come to her with issues with a student, whether it was they were having learning issues, they were having focus issues, when you would talk to her, I have real concerns about this student, I'm not really sure what to do, they're having a hard time, they're struggling. The first comment typically out of her mouth would be, well, do they have ADHD? Do you think they have ADHD? And that was the first go-to question. When you have an administrator, such as an assistant principal, when the first thing out of their mouth when you bring up an issue with a student that you need help with, a student that's having difficulty, when their first comment is, does a child have ADHD? Do you think they have ADHD? That's providing an environment where it's giving you something to look for, where you may not have been looking in that direction at all, and maybe you shouldn't be. But once that seed is planted, you can't unring that bell once the administrator has put that out there, and that's creating an environment where you're looking for something that may not be there. When a teacher suspects that a student has ADHD, the first step is to always have a parent conference and to discuss with the parent. Your child is having troubles focusing, they're having troubles paying attention in class, they're not following directions, they're not sitting still in their seat, they won't stay seated, those types of issues that are happening in class. And it is strongly suggested by administration to tell the parent, would you please consider taking your child to the pediatrician? Have you considered talking to your doctor about this? And to document those conversations in detail with those very specific problems and behaviors, and recommending to a parent that they take the parent conference form with all of that written with them to the pediatrician and share it with the pediatrician. Therefore, the easy end result is the doctor sees you commenting about focus and attention and inability to sit still, which would then result in hopefully giving the child a medication to stop the problem there. It's a very quick fix. In having parents in for a parent conference regarding a student's focus and attention issues, after the first conference, if that does not result in a parent taking the child to the pediatrician and looking for a diagnosis and there is no result, the teacher will have the parents in again 4 to 6 weeks later and have the same focus and attention conversation again and request the parent take the child to the pediatrician. That is a pattern that continues over and over until eventually the parent takes the child to the pediatrician to get the end result that you're looking for. My experience has been that some pediatricians will provide a diagnosis of ADHD and medication to one of my students without any evaluation or scales being filled out by the teacher, myself. And other pediatricians will respond by sending out behavior forms, scales for me to fill out to provide them further information. There are a number of different behavioral rating scales and forms that have to be filled out, and in doing so, there may be 70 or 100 and some different issues and questions on them. And the technique is to first go through and identify the ones that you solidly know the answers to without question. It's just an instinct. And skip over the ones that are questionable that you may have to think about. And kind of go back and look over your answers, tally up some totals to kind of get an idea of where you're at. Then you can go back to the ones that are in question and put them in light of, well, it could kind of be this or this, but I'm going to go with the one that's in the direction to my favor for how I would like the form to have an end result. I have never in almost 20 years had a pediatrician contact me regarding a student in terms of ADHD or any condition. Recently, I overheard a conversation between two teachers where one teacher said that the mother was refusing to medicate her child and therefore she was going to begin paperwork to have that child placed in a behavioral unit for emotionally handicapped children. Essentially, that teacher is giving the parent a choice. Either give your child a pill or have them placed in a class with emotionally handicapped children. It's a lot easier to have a parent give a kid a pill than it is for me to work 10 times harder and put into place 20 more strategies and try to fix problems in my room that require so much more effort than I already put into my job day after day. That it's an easy way out. The trend recently in school that seems to be increasing each year is to identify as many children as possible with as many potential problems as you can, whether it's identifying them as having behavioral issues in terms of emotional handicaps or learning disabilities, or whether it's ADHD or autism spectrum disorder or oppositional defiant disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder. Over the past 10 years in first grade, we start every year with 4 or 5 students already identified as having a mental, behavioral, or learning disability out of 120 to 140. This year, we started with 18 already identified as having a problem, and that's unheard of. What's different this year to make that 18 is that we've gone to a performance-based pay for teachers. Performance-based pay is driving teachers to identify as many students as possible with mental, behavioral, and learning disabilities. Because you can bet if my paycheck is going to be based on the student's performance, I'm going to identify as many issues as I possibly can to justify any negative data that may come out of their performance. This year with performance-based pay, the data that's being collected for each classroom's performance is being posted in common areas for all teachers to see, not only how they're doing, but every other class as well. That's pitting teachers against each other and creating an environment of competition. In creating an environment of competition between teachers, that is only going to result in teachers trying to justify why their students are performing the way they are, and will therefore result in teachers, out of desperation, trying to have more students identified as having mental, behavioral, or learning disabilities. When you threaten a teacher's job and her ability to provide for her family, that will only motivate her to identify more and more students as having mental, behavioral, or learning disabilities.
Tyler was about 4 years old when his mother told me that his daycare suggested ADHD medication for his behavior. When Tyler was first placed on the medication, the doctor gave him 10 milligrams of Adderall. It seemed that the medication wasn't working. He wasn't doing any better in school, so they decided that they wanted to continue to increase the dosage. He went from 10 milligrams to 30 milligrams extended release in just 2 years' time. When Tyler came into my full-time care at 6 years old, he wasn't the little boy I remembered. He was like in a zombie-like state. He was lethargic, withdrawn. Couldn't even tell me how his day went. While on the medication, Tyler experienced other side effects like headaches. He went to the clinic so often that I thought he was faking it. But then I got a call from the school telling me that Tyler had an incident. They told me that Tyler was on the playground with another boy and told that boy that he was going to murder his family with a machine gun. At the time, I didn't know that stimulants can cause psychotic behavior, and I didn't connect the dots. Tyler also had gastrointestinal side effects that got so bad that I decided to get him off that medication again. I talked to Tyler, and he told me he didn't like the medication. He didn't like the way it made him feel. He asked me if he could stop the medication, and I told him I would do my best to try. Immediately, I decided to take him off the medication. Over that summer, I weaned him off the medication again, and the side effects went away. It took a few weeks, but he went back to his old self, silly, laughing, playing, always having a good time. That summer, Tyler did summer school, and his grades and attitude improved off the medication. The very next year, I got Tyler started in a new school in the same school district. Everything was going very well for about a month. And then the records were transferred from the old school, and that's when the harassment started. We started getting phone calls and notes almost daily, trying to persuade us to put him back on the medication. I got a letter from the teachers telling me that I needed to come in for a ParentTeacher Conference. The day of the ParentTeacher Conference, I was greeted by 5 administrators. There was a guidance counselor, the vice principal, the principal, his teacher, and a DCF caseworker. When I got into the conference room, there was a child's chair that they had motioned for me to sit in. But on the other side of the desk, there were 5 adult chairs. I didn't think anything of it. But while sitting there and having the conference, I felt like they were talking down and looking down on me the entire time. They taunted me with phrases like, "Don't you want what's best for your son? Don't you care about his work performance in school?" Of course I wanted what was best for him. I told them that I was opposed to the medication because of the way it made him feel and act. The DCF worker then chimed in that if I had not given him the medication, that I could get in some trouble. Trouble, I thought. Were they going to take my son from me? I honestly felt threatened that if I didn't give him the medication, that they might take my son from me. What was I to do? Well, I have to admit they were pretty persuasive. After that meeting, I decided that maybe the medication might be the best way to go. Decided to call his doctor and start treatment again. That's when I called his doctor and they renewed his prescription for Adderall, 30 milligrams, extended release. After Tyler got back on the medication, his gastrointestinal side effects started right back up again. I called his doctor, and that's when he told me that it was a side effect of the medication. Because Tyler was experiencing side effects with Adderall, the doctor suggested that we change him to methylphenidate, and then placed him on a 30 milligram dose. He was only 23 pills into that new medication when he died. Christmas Day 2010 was Tyler's final day. He played all day with the new toys that he had gotten, and about 4 o'clock that day he told his grandmother that he was tired and wanted to lay down for a nap. He woke up about 2 hours later at 6 o'clock, complaining of a headache. His grandmother gave him some food, he sat down and ate, but after just a little bit of time wasn't feeling well and decided he wanted to go back to sleep. And that was the last anybody heard from my son. Around midnight, Tyler's grandfather went to check on him. What he's seen will haunt him for the rest of his life. Tyler's body was cold. There was blood and mucus foamed around his mouth and his nose. His first response was to try to clear the passageway so Tyler could breathe, and perform CPR while Tyler's grandmother called the 911 responders. During that time, they performed CPR and did everything they could to try to keep Tyler around. But unfortunately, Tyler had already left. The autopsy found pulmonary congestion, and the medical examiner confided in me that Tyler had an enlarged heart the size of an adult. I lost everything that day, and unfortunately, I thought I was doing the right thing. I trusted the doctors, I trusted the school board, I trusted everybody involved that they had my son's best interest at heart. But on the day of his funeral, none of them were in attendance. None of them came. None of them showed their condolences. None of them told me how sorry they were. I didn't see his doctor. I didn't see his teachers. All I seen was a family completely torn in half. A phrase that I heard a lot since he's been gone is that the benefits of these medications outweigh the risks. But I have to ask you, does anything outweigh the risk of losing your son's life or your daughter's life? Is anything worth that risk? So please think, please do the research, please make better decisions for your children. Because in the end, we're the only thing protecting them.
And looking back at almost the past 20 years of being an educator, I look back with such regret over all of the parents I have pressured and have witnessed being pressured to take their child in pursuit of a diagnosis to try to make my job easier and to lift some of the burden off what I have to do on a day-to-day basis. I regret a lot of those children who were put in a position where they weren't in control of that, where that control was coming from me and from the parent and from a doctor. And even though the child couldn't help the way that they were, or the way that they learned, or the way that they behaved, or the way that they were brought up, or the way they were raised, and the environment they lived in, it's a lot easier to have it out of sight, out of mind. To know that a parent will just give them their pill in the morning, and my job will be a lot easier. It's an easy fix and an easy way out, and there's a lot of guilt that comes with having made those decisions over the years. Even if they were decisions made for self-preservation, whether it was to save my own test scores, or my own job, or my own sanity, my sanity should have never been sacrificed for the sanity of a child. And that's something I'll have to live with. But all I can do is be aware of it from now on, and be conscious, and to put in the effort that's needed to avoid putting another child in that situation. Because it's not their responsibility and it's not their fault. And we all have to work harder, and we all have to do more, and we all have to do better as educators and as parents to ensure that we preserve their minds, because that's the most valuable commodity that we have as a country and as a people.
It's done. Video's done. Video's done. The video's done. Come on, dude. It's done. Do your video.